I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board has recessed from executive session, and subsequent to this meeting, we'll be going back into executive session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Enter?
I'm here.
Oh.
I've got to go in here.
Oh, fair enough.
Mrs. Introducing Angie.
Commissioner?
Okay. Commissioner Anger, I am here.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Commissioner Humberston?
Here.
Commissioner Kalani said yes. Commissioner McNeil?
Aye.
Commissioner Soa?
Aye.
All present.
Thank you. Chair would take a motion to approve the agenda as presented, unless there are corrections.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll wait for a moment to give Hugh a chance. There we go. Hugh, do you have any changes in the agenda that you need? Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The end of report from executive session, the previous executive session on August 3rd and September 17th.
Commissioner Humberston, you have an updated
Do we have an
agenda
update?
sitting on your stack there.
Ah,
Because there was no, we did not have an executive session on the 13th. Or you had already reported out on the 3rd.
Thank you. Didn't see that one. So just for today, and we are in recess, so there will be no report at this time. Has anyone signed up for public comment this evening? Here we go. Mr. Mitchell?
Well, I was going to on that one, the first one, but apparently we ain't got no report out of the executive session will pass.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
next month we'll have another report out of the executive session then?
Yes, there will be.
Thank you.
Moving on, action items. We will convene the local contract review board. We are convened. And item number 1 is an increase in the general manager's spending authority for public improvement contracts to $75,000. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There is a motion and a second. Questions or discussion?
I just wonder if it wouldn't be wise for us to make this on a temporary basis until we get a new manager. Say makes this effective from now until July 1st of next year.
Till June 30.
June 30.
Yeah.
Is that, are you requesting the motion be amended?
I am, yes.
Is that acceptable to the mover?
Was the mover.
I haven't had a chance to think about it, just heard. I don't know. I can't think of any good reason why, but I'll go along with it.
Okay.
I'm just wondering why. Anyway.
Care to respond to the question why?
I just look at the general managers of the past.
Okay.
And say, we're going to get some of the carte blanche power to okay contracts.
Okay. Does the second accept?
Well, wait a minute. There's a question.
Moving back.
So wait a second. So all we're doing is we're allowing the general manager to sign for things up to $75,000.
That's right. It's an increase of $25,000.
It's not necessarily all contracts. Most of the contracts come here first before they go out there.
Yeah.
But there are times when it's just expeditious and fiscally prudent to do that. And so that's.
Well, I'm not sure that
But
if you counted the contracts, the general manager probably approves more than
I think you're right, yeah.
the board approves.
I think if I'm understanding your concern correctly, the concern is that when we get a new general manager next year, we may or may not want that general manager to have the same contracting level. And that's what his concern is. So do we want to set that limit at, do we want to have a time certain on that limit? Or go ahead and do it and then reconsider the whole issue back in, at our next organizational meeting in June or in July?
Yeah, July, the second. I'm good with the second.
You-
To change it, yes.
To change it. Did you have a comment, Mr. Moore?
I just want to give the board the history behind this. The board had said that, at least both boards, Sunrise and CRW, had requested that as we began to kind of cross-pollinate, that our policies and Sunrise's mirror each other. Sunrise at their last board meeting approved a resolution adopting CRW's LCRBs with one exception, and that exception was because of the nature of their business, they have a lot of new starts in their area, and also the fact that we're getting ready to engage on a large project, which is the backbone project, that they increase their general manager's authority for public improvement contracts to $75,000, although the signature authority for all other contracts would remain the same. So, because the board had talked about mirroring each other, so that then put them in that one category of contracting out of whack with CRW, or put CRW out of whack with Sunrise. And so the intent of this then was to make them equivalent, so that's what it's all about.
So,
But either way, it's not gonna,
Yes, I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're saying we're gonna take another look at it next fiscal year.
and quite frankly, that's been the history, that the board has historically looked at who the general managers are that are here at any given time and have fashioned contracting authority limits around the abilities of the general manager that are in place at the time. So that's really what it's all about.
well, it has been moved and it has been seconded, and the mover and the second, if I understand correctly, have accepted the addition with the time constraint, that it would revert back to the original number on July 1, and that we reconsider what we want to do after July 1. Are we all clear?
Right, and do we have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the main resolution?
The mover and the second have accepted the amendment, so we can move on the entire,
Okay.
the entire motion. So is there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none? Yes?
One of the things I might suggest is under section 4 of the resolution, I think if you put effective now and will terminate as of
Yeah, what do we need to
June
get in?
30th, 2016, then it's automatic. Okay? And then it has to come back here for the board to consider.
Thank you.
This date terminated on June 30th. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Would the clerk call the roll for this, please?
Commissioner Angier?
Yes.
Commissioner Humberston?
Yes.
Commissioner Kalani?
Yes.
Commissioner McNeil?
Yes.
Commissioner Soa?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And we now adjourn the Contract Review Board and move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. informational reports. Mr. Moore.
Agenda item number 2 is really looking for the board to acknowledge this contract because it is intended not to exceed $30,000. But because of the importance of this particular contract to what the board has requested of staff, I thought it was prudent to put it on the agenda so that everybody knows what's going on. Under our local contract review board, the professional and personal services of less than $100,000 are exempt from competitive bidding. The contract with Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham is the organization that came here during the work session and made a presentation before the board as to how they would represent CRW when we decide to go out and get bonding. The board has indicated that because of the nature of the financial markets, that there's some urgency to get that done. And we were shooting tentatively to hit the streets in November. So staff has determined that it would be prudent to contract directly with the principals that showed up from the firm so that we can compress the time frame that it will take to basically hit the street with our bonding before interest rates begin to increase. So, like I said, this is an informational item where I'm really trying to share what it is we're doing so that it's transparent to everybody.
What the Fed do today?
They did not raise.
They didn't raise.
Well, then we got time. Let's roll.
That's
Good news. Let's roll.
Is there any questions or concerns on any part of any member of the board? Then we will move on to item number 3, preliminary fiscal year 2015 financial statement and review. Carol?
So, as you know, based on our agreement, I don't come to you every month with financial statements and reports, but since we're talking about the end of the fiscal year, and we're in really good shape with our draft financials, I thought I would just come share with you some of the results that we're finding. So we are almost finished with our draft financials. We made another couple of adjusting entries today. We still have that big, giant PERS entry that Julie Desmoni from Moss Adams told the board about last year that is going to affect our financials, although it might not have the negative effect that we thought, but there will be some restating of the prior year, and there's just some interesting things going on with that. So that entry's not been made. I have a draft entry that I'm going to share with the auditors before we actually push it through our system.
Just as a question, basically every public agency is going through this process as a result of the failure of the PERS solution to come to fruition.
Well, actually, it's not due to that. It's due to the Government Accounting Standards Board trying to make us a little bit more transparent. We used to put a note in the statements that said, hey, we might have some unfunded liability here if everybody retired tomorrow. And what the GASB, Government Accounting Standards Board, has said is, we really need this to be part of your financial statements. It will be a liability in your financials rather than simply a note.
Because some public entities fail to understand that liability. That's why the state finally made it. So everybody had to do it.
Right. And so this is a government-wide, all across the country. Everybody that does governmental financial reporting has to comply with this GASB statement this year.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court decision won't affect us until 2017 because the rates have already been set.
Okay. So PERS doesn't play into this part of it at all?
hers is actually providing individualized information to every governmental entity. Originally, they said we would have it in the spring. I think we finally got it at the beginning of this month. So, you know, we do have the number. And actually, there's a chunk that is, we're actually a little overfunded right now, so instead of being a liability, it's gonna be an asset, which is confusing a lot of people. So, hence the reason I'm gonna have the auditors validate my journal entry before I push it through our system and just make sure that we're accounting for everything appropriately. And speaking of that, Julie will be here at the work session on September 28th. This is her opportunity to talk with the board, find out any concerns or issues that you might have. So, you know, feel free to talk to her. You can talk to her privately. You can talk to her at the work session. You can ask me to leave the room. You know, whatever you want to do, that's your opportunity to have some one-on-one FaceTime with the auditor prior to the field work being done. So just a little quick look at the financials. I didn't provide a lot of information. You do have the financial statements in your packet. But our resources, total resources for the general fund was $1 million higher than what we had budgeted. A portion of that is rate revenue, and we had an incredible June billing cycle where we had lots of water usage, so that's a big part of it. Our requirements, we still kind of maintained, you know, we keep close eye, we do, you know, budgets are based on estimates, but we keep a close eye on things. And so our
conservation message didn't take?
Well, the conservation message didn't really go out before the June usage, so.
Except that we've been talking about this for 6 months.
Yes, yes. And people knew it, didn't they?
Yeah.
So.
Some of us did.
But anyway, so our requirements, we were under by about 5%. And then in SDC reserve, we sold 49 services in the year, which was significantly higher than what we had forecast. In our budget, we do a very conservative forecast of SDCs because we don't want to count on that coming in if it doesn't. So anyway, the SDC revenue was higher than expected. Our general fund revenue was higher than expected, and our requirements are kind of right in line. I don't like to have too tight of a margin there, and so the $421,000 is not bad. We probably could have budgeted a little bit tighter, but you just don't know what's going to happen. So what that does for us, and this kind of goes back to our whole philosophy and policy of what we're trying to do, is it increases our ending fund balance, our reserve balances. And so our capital reserve, we sent $1,250,000 over to the capital reserve fund from the general fund, and that was part of the plan. And we used some of that money for CIP projects, but we ended up with an increase of about $500,000 in the capital reserve fund. So that's our savings account. That's to do kind of our ongoing capital projects, the smaller ones, not the ones that we're going to go out.
Yeah, I see Bob writing it down back. He's taking note.
And our SDC funds, based on our budget, we thought we were going to use that pretty much all up by the end of this fiscal year. And in fact, we ended up with $415,000 in SDC reserves. And we also increased our general fund ending balance by about $1 million. In the next 2 cycles, 2 fiscal years, or in the biennial budget cycle, we will be moving $4 million from the general fund to the capital reserve fund in the 2-year time frame. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, where we are. It was a good year. We were able to increase our reserves as we planned. We kept our spending within the parameters of the budget. If you look at the reports that were in your packet, there's not any of the appropriation categories that we exceeded budget. So if anybody has any questions about any of that?
Anyone?
Thank you, Carol, you did a great job.
Thank you.
I just miss seeing
I would assume on number 4 you'll also be reporting?
Yeah, this is still me. This is our debt covenant compliance reporting, and this is something that I'm required to do to the governing body, to the board every year. I could just send you guys the letter. I don't really need to present this to you, but it's an opportunity to kind of talk about where we are and how things are going. So the way we do the calculations, we take our gross revenue minus our operating expenditures only, and we came out of the 7.52. Our requirement is a 1.25, so you know we're in really good shape. This is information that we can share with the rating agencies.
For the rate bonding company, this is
Yeah.
It
good
was a
news.
far cry from where we were 3 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
And if you take out the SDC money, and our requirement is a 1.0, we're at 6.98. So still, you know, those are really, really good numbers. But one of the things I wanted to point out is we are building our reserves, and that was part of our plan. And if I take out of the operating revenue that money that we sent off to the capital reserve fund, because right now I get to count all the revenue, I don't have to say what, but we're saving part of that. If I take that out and redo the calculations, we're at a 4.77 and a 4.23. It's still really good, but that just tells us that we're bringing in sufficient revenues to put money in the savings account and still meet our debt covenants.
So our rate plan is working.
Yes.
Very much.
So then you go down to kind of the next level is when we sell bonds, we have to pay them back.
Yeah, no kidding.
And again, that's part of the plan, is we wanted rates that would be sufficient to cover any new debt that we would incur. So I did kind of a calculation to say how much debt could we accommodate.
Thank you.
And we could manage an additional $2 million in debt service. And that would get our ratios down to the 1.39 and 1.29, which is maybe a little bit of an edge for the rating agencies. They would like to see those numbers more robust. But it does tell us that we can accommodate about another $2 million in debt service.
At the current rate,
With the rates that we have in place right now.
I mean this year, because it changes next year. Our water rate changes
Right,
next year.
right. So
Not
that's,
only does the base rate change, but so too does the water rate.
Right.
So let me state it another way, if I may. Carol. The question I asked Carol when I saw this is, what does that convert to in terms of if we were to go out for bonding today?
Thank you.
How much money could we borrow with that kind of structure? Now, you said approximately 20 million.
yeah, it's actually, I did a calculation
Oh, did
after
you?
we talked today, and it's about 27 million. So,
So that gives you an idea of what we're talking
but again, we don't, in my mind, I would like to be a little higher in those ratios than the 1.39, 1.29. Again, if we have additional conservation, if we have additional curtailment, then our revenues are going to be lower. So, and as we're discussing the bonding, we don't know how the structure is going to be. That's yet to be determined, but we're not able to spend 30 million in 3 years, so we will probably have a couple, 2 or 3 deposits of money, 2 or 3 different issues. And so we'll be keeping those numbers good as we move forward.
So my question was, the numbers you ran, are they based on all the future increases in the rate or just where we are today?
This is based on where we are today. Now, that being said,
Okay.
I did one other thing, which I did not include in my
Oh, it's down, doesn't
presentation. And that
I should have
is
known.
looking at the biennial budget and looking at the amount that we were going to transfer, the $4 million that we were going to transfer. That would drop us a little bit under the 1.0 and the 1.25 based on
Current rate.
current rate. So, you know, we do need the future rate increases to keep us
Fortify
in
that.
line
Yeah,
and
right.
to make sure that
Because
works.
next
and
year,
that we
not only
need-
does the base rate rise, but so does
So
the consumption.
years, yes.
Yeah.
So really what we're trying to do is be conservative in terms of our numbers. The plan that the board approved puts us on target with being able to meet our objectives. But probably to make Carol happy, we probably need a couple of more cycles to get the bottom ratio up a little bit more when we hit the street. Now, what we've heard when we were talking with the firm that we just talked about is that given the duration of the project, that we would be looking for incremental releases. The only downside of that, but I don't think we have much choice because we have a limited period of time that we can expend money once we hit the street for the bonding, is that we will pay a premium for the scheduled releases. And what we don't know at this point is how much.
But that percentage.
that is.
Yeah.
So, but Carol, I think in terms of what she's doing here, she's trying to give you a picture
Yeah, no, it's good.
of what's going on.
Because that question was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think when Larry and I were talking about this, when we get ready to hit the street, that we probably will have a third party evaluate our assertions just to make sure that
Another
we're
sanity
heading,
check.
yeah, that
Yeah.
we're going to.
Sanity.
Another sanity check.
Yeah.
And so that's all I have on the debt covenant, so I've met my obligation to the board, and
Whew.
we'll do this again next year.
Oh, wait. We'll probably do it again, sort of, when we get up the bonding.
Yeah. We will have prospective
Yeah.
calculations of
Right.
debt covenant.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Carol. Item 5, management report, Mr. Moore.
I don't know if you noticed it in this management report, but as you know, the general manager's report is really an informational report to the board to try to keep you informed about what's going on. And we, over the last 2 reports, I believe, we've added another feature to the management reports. It occurred to me that when we report, you really don't get a lot of information about the day-to-day operations of the agency. And so what we've asked our staff to do, department heads, is to add to the management report things that are going on in their particular area. And that gives you an opportunity to kind of see some of the things that are going on. There may be months where some departments don't report, but we really wanted to create a space where staff can communicate with the board through a document, and then if you have questions, then you should feel free to ask us and we'll try to get answers for you. The first thing, as you heard, is that we had a work session on August 17th, and we met to kind of calibrate, if you will, with the board, where we're going in terms of from the 152nd Avenue reservoir, proposed reservoir, to Beaver Creek Road on our what we call our southern backbone. And I think that after the meeting, we also had, or during the meeting, we also had a presentation by Lewis Young, Robertson, and Birmingham. Their principal, David Robertson, provided the board with an overview of the services that he would provide in our attempts to go out and procure funding for the project that we were talking about. And as soon as probably the beginning of next week, we will make contact with them, we'll get in contact with them, and we'll begin that process. I know the board has some urgency behind that, and so that's what we want to get on to. The next one is that the city of Portland has formed a public utility board for both its water and sewer. And this is really their response to the citizens initiative where they were going to essentially create a separate agency in the city of Portland to manage the water and sewer because of some of the activities that the prior commissions have been involved in terms of inappropriately spending money from particularly the water agency. I was asked by Mayor Charlie Hills and Commissioner Nick Fish to sit on that board, and that has occurred. I think I stated in prior reports that would be happening. It's now official, and so we were sworn in on September 1st. I must add that I'm the only public utility official on the board out of 9 people, so it's kind of interesting.
The only public utility official on a public utilities board.
Huh?
I say the only public utilities official on a public utilities board.
That's correct. So, the other thing that
Go figure.
that occurred.
What do you do when you quit here?
A lot of people have asked me that question, so I told them that I reserve the right to quit, so if I did like it. But we had on the 29th and 30th, we had a large power outage that affected our operations here. And so what you see there on page 4 of 13 is a chronology of events of what happened. And I think we were down for over a day, without having power here. We've since found out that had created some problems with our security system. We're now evaluating how we can plug some of the holes that surfaced as a result of that. We won't talk about the specifics because of the nature of it, but I thought it was helpful for you to see what went on when that outage occurred with PGE. Our generator worked, that wasn't the issue. PGE stepped up, but as I indicated, there's still things that were occurring that shouldn't have happened. So, you may have seen on Coin TV where our emergency manager was interviewed about our fire hydrants. We've had a case of vandalism to our fire hydrants, and in conjunction with Crime Stoppers, we have now established a fund of $1,000 for any information that will lead to the conviction and prosecution of the vandals who have been disturbing us. I think we spent pretty close, I'm just guessing here, about $20,000 thus far, having to $20,000 to $25,000 to respond to this problem. And so working with Crime Stoppers, I think, is a good thing to get the word out there. We've also posted that on the website so that people know what's going on. The drought update, I put a copy of the posting that we put out, letting folks know that we had moved to level 2. So there's a copy of that here, and I won't read it because it kind of speaks for itself. And then on number 6 there is department updates, and that's the part that I was referring to. That if you read through there, you can see the emergency management report and things that they're involved in, what we've been doing with the system seismic modeling, and then the drought response plan. Put that together. We've been using some of the work that we've done on our COOP and emergency planning as a result of the drought. Then you can see the engineering update that engineering staff is working on the master plan. There's been work with the city of Milwaukee in terms of trying to get the IGA that we had set out there to get that completed. They've had some difficulties with their engineering department in the sense that they've had engineers resign. I think they just now hired a new engineering manager.
Who left? Jason Rice?
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So, and as some of you may know, that Milwaukee has had quite a bit of problems with retaining staff.
yeah.
Matter of fact, they even brought in an outside investigator about, what, a year and a half ago, about a year ago, to try to figure out what was going on, and it's just circumstance, I guess, is the best that was a conclusion of all that, so.
It's a tough town to work
Huh?
in. With their financial situation, it's just a tough place to
Yeah.
work.
They're really short on money,
Yeah,
and so one of the things that we're kind of reach out to them to see if there's anything we can do to help. And Bob's been in contact with them on several occasions to see if we can help in any way. The CRW Sunrise Engineering consolidation efforts, there's kind of a chronology of what's been going on there. Sunrise has had some issues with, they lost an employee, an engineering employee, and so they've had to kind of take a couple steps backwards and see how they're going to respond to staff shortage. As you know, we've been working with the Oregon City Boundary and Hydraulic Service Area, and that's proceeding. There's been several meetings. And the Beaver Creek and Carver Bridge Terminal Storage, that is another project that's been worked on, and you can see the activity there. I think most of the work, if I'm not mistaken, on the Sunrise, the JTA work is pretty much wrapping up at this point.
Yeah, we got a few more months
Yeah,
of activity going on.
but they've made significant progress. I mean, if you go down and see what's going on, I suspect that over time, doesn't mean that this project is dead. I suspect that there will be more money coming that way, and we'll see probably some resurgence of work in that area. And then the rest of the stuff, I won't go into any detail on. It's there. If you have questions, please let us know. And then the finance and accounting update. As you know, our CFO is providing services for both CRW and Sunrise. That's working pretty well. We haven't had any kind of holes or anything like that. We are looking now to how do we gear up for the audits, I guess in both organizations, and also begin to kind of turn the corner, as you heard from Carol, in terms of getting ready for the bonding. That's going to be quite a bit of work for her staff, and so we're trying to gear up for that. And that's pretty much it. So that concludes my report, unless there's questions on the board.
Thanks, Lee.
Any questions?
A lot going on.
A lot more to go on.
We do have a tendency to not think about what we've done. We can only look at what's in front of us, and so sometimes it's helpful to look in the rear view mirror.
Yeah.
It's like rowing the boat.
Turn
You
around.
don't look over your shoulder, you're in the middle of the lake, and before you.
More progress is being made than you sometimes realize.
Yes.
Any public comment today? Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Don't there, back here. Yes, I got a couple questions. I heard Milwaukee's, I don't know, stood around in the process of notifying or maybe notifying CRW that they're in the process of taking over Felony Flats South, which is Johnson Creek to Sunnybrook or what, that area. And so if that's true, do you guys have a picture of what the north is gonna look like? I know CRW is basically taking over Happy Valley, so that creates a whole new section of north once my area is gone. from 82nd to like Linwood or Stanley, something like that, you know, that whole section. And, so is that, am I on the right track?
I have not heard anything about
And
that.
I know within 10 years, but I heard it's being fast-tracked by Milwaukee to take over the water.
The only thing that we've heard, Mr. Mitchell, is that Milwaukee is looking at the industrial area along, what is it, 224?
Yeah, 212, 224.
212, 224.
In that area.
But we have heard that they're not interested in doing any major annexations. What they have told us is they can't afford it.
Yeah.
That that what they've heard is that they would have to increase fire and police services, and when they ran the numbers, it just didn't pencil out.
Okay.
That's what we were told anyway, so.
Okay, because when they started the urban renewal program in that area, everything east of 82nd was going to go to Happy Valley, which has been changed, and everything
Oh, I think
north
Yeah.
of 82nd will become Milwaukee, except for the town center that they're fighting over. So like Milwaukee Police, water, property taxes, all that are going to be going to 82nd within 10 years. That's what their master plan was like 3 or 4 years ago.
What I've heard, you know, and this is all, well, it's not even anecdotal. There's been years of discussion between Happy Valley and Milwaukee as to where the dividing line is going to be for what's Milwaukee and what's Happy Valley. After years of discussion, there's an agreement that they're trying to put together through an IGA that says anything east of 205 is Happy Valley. Anything west of 205 is Milwaukee. But that doesn't mean that they're going to annex that area. It's just they needed a division because what they've heard from Metro, and it's not just them, but all cities, but particularly in Clackamas County, you need to identify those areas or designate those areas within each of the unincorporated areas that you plan to absorb over time. And that's really what that division is all about. So.
And the need for that goes to who's going to provide the services.
Right.
And it takes a long time and a lot of money to do that. You know, that conversation started in 1995. And you see where it is today.
I have a question on that. Do I understand the law correctly that for an annexation to occur, both the citizens of the city as well as the citizens to be annexed have to agree to that annexation?
That is correct.
Or if Oregon City's annexations are any indication, thank you, we're probably, none of us will probably be here by the time that ever occurs.
I figure I'll be long gone.
But I think that one of the things, as we said initially, that one of the biggest problems here is, and I think Milwaukee has astutely kind of done their homework, and they found out that annexation is not free. You know.
Oregon City did too.
Yeah. Oh, did they?
Absolutely. They've been.
Well, that's right, because of the.
That's what started the vote thing.
Yeah.
Was they figured out that, oh my God, you know, we annexed all this stuff, and then the taxes went through the roof.
And I guess my second question is, Larry and Hugh made comments about the manager being gone, looking for a new manager by June 1st, and then Hugh mentioned that he was going to quit. So is CRW in the process of is Lee Moore either quitting or moving on to Happy Valley, Clackamas River Water Board, or whatever you call it, you know, management of the 190 that's been put in place?
Where did you hear
Because you said he was gonna quit. I got a recording.
that I said I was gonna quit?
No, Mr. Moore. He made a comment that when he quits,
Oh, I see,
and
okay.
when he quits.
I didn't understand what you were saying.
Larry started out by saying, when we have a new manager.
Mr. Moore has indicated that he will be retiring at the end of this fiscal year, and I can assure you that he is not moving into any other position within CRW or SWA at this time. The only job that I know that he has coming up is on that Public Utilities Board. I think he's made it clear to his wife, or she's made it clear to him, that that's as far as it goes. So,
So he, from the
No,
record, he isn't gonna
And that's
apply
not,
for that.
and that's an unpaid job, so.
that's an unpaid job, yes.
So just for the record, I don't have anything else. So he won't be applying for the 190-minute
Absolutely.
You will be?
Will not.
Oh, I have to.
Just ask him. You can't tell a person not to apply. You need to ask him if he's going to.
Okay, well, okay.
Well, and quite frankly, Mr. Mitchell, there is no position as the general manager of the 190. That
Yeah,
there
there
is
is
not
no
a
job
position.
like that.
Somebody's gotta manage,
Yeah.
like he does and like, what's his name for Sunrise does. Somebody's gotta manage each agency.
Yeah, we take turns every other year.
It's a joint operation.
It's a joint operation.
It's a joint, it's not a structure per
Yeah,
se.
right. It's not a political entity. It's a governmental entity under 190.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, any other comments from the audience?
I have one
Yes,
thing.
Mr. Moore?
Just to remind the board that you should have received a work session agenda, proposed agenda, and so I just wanted to give you a reminder of that. We have, as you heard, Mr. Desmani from Moss Adams will be in attendance. That's on the 28th of September. We will talk about the ORS 190, and I think this is Board Secretary, Mr. Kalani, had put some of these topics out, so we have reflected that in the agenda. There's some discussions about the joint operating plan, and the board wanted an opportunity to be able to talk about that amongst yourself in terms of what we think our next steps ought to be. So I just, again, that's just a heads up in case folks have forgotten.
Okay.
So I got a couple things. Tammy Stevens from the Beaver Creek Hamlet called Monday night, and they were all freaking out over all kinds of things, and I just said, chill. So here, the first thing was, somebody had told them, I don't know where they get their information, but that CRW had agreed to supply water to all of those places inside Oregon City on Beaver Creek. And I said, no. I says, the only conversation we have is with the one development for Evergreen, and that hasn't even been voted on or anything. We have just had information on that. And I assured her that the ratepayers in Beaver Creek would always have the first shot of any water that we have, and that there it really isn't anything to worry about. And then she goes, well, how do you, I said, look, I said, what this board is concentrating on is getting this backbone built so we can be selling our water on the south side of the river. And that's all I can tell you, which is exactly what we told them when we were out there the last time, and that nothing had changed. So hopefully that will be what they hear at their meeting, but I just wanted all of you to know. The other thing that they were upset about was the fact that they didn't know that the board meetings had changed, and that they thought that they were going to be permanently changed. I said, no, the board voted to change 2 meetings to accommodate other schedules, and that the board would revert back to our regular schedule, and that they could see all of this information on our website anytime they wanted, and they're always welcome to call. So that was kind of excited.
We did get notice, Bob, and correct me on this, there was a LUBA appeal that I believe is now settled. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Bob?
for the Evergreen.
For the Evergreen property.
Right.
Yeah, on the
I saw
Evergreen
that.
property.
I read that.
And so I'm wondering if she's confusing that.
I don't know, and I'm real careful not to put words in her mouth, because when everything gets all confused,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
so I'm real careful about
Okay.
how you respond back to that, but basically I said, nothing's changed. We're working real hard to get this other water backboard thing done, and that's all we know.
I have a postcard at home. I think you will appreciate this. It shows two cowboys with shovels on the opposite, each on the other side of a creek, trying to hit each other with the shovels. And it's Western Discussion of Water Rights is the title. So I think whenever you start talking about water, people get real nervous real fast.
I think that real brief conversation that occurred during the Evergreen development stuff about whether there was enough water or not,
Yeah.
kind of got all screwed up somehow, and people have taken that the wrong way. And that, I said, as far as I know, there's no issues. We listened to our staff, they assured us that we were okay, and for that one development, that's it, nothing more than that, so.
Any other comments or questions? Then we stand adjourned. The board will be going